The town of Grayford did not measure security by police sirens or alarm systems. It measured security by light. As long as the street lamps turned on at dusk, people felt safe. As long as storefront signs flickered neon colors into the night, businesses felt alive. And as long as phones charged beside beds and refrigerators hummed softly in kitchens, life felt predictable. Electricity was not a luxury in Grayford. It was the background heartbeat of everything. People didn't notice it. They trusted it. Belief, when repeated long enough, stops feeling like belief. It becomes infrastructure. At the edge of town, beyond the last bus stop in a row of quiet warehouses with peeling paint, stood a larger structure. It had once stored shipping crates decades ago, but now its metal doors were rusted, its windows clouded with dust, and its sign half fallen, so only 3 letters remained visible. R. Most residents barely remembered it existed. Delivery drivers used it as a turning point. Teenagers used its wall for graffiti, but no one expected anything from it. Except one man. Elias Voss did not live near the town center. He rented a small apartment above a closed hardware shop 2 streets away from the warehouse district. He was not unfriendly. He simply spoke only when speaking felt necessary. He repaired bicycles without charge. He helped elderly neighbors carry groceries. He returned lost wallets without opening them. But what people remembered most about Elias was not kindness. It was routine. Every morning before sunrise, he walked to the warehouse. Every evening after sunset, he returned. Rain or clear skies. Winter frost or summer heat. He walked. At first, people assumed he worked security. Then they learned he did not. The building was officially empty. That made it funnier. Guarding ghosts. Someone once joked at the cafe window. Charging rent to pigeons, another added. Elias never corrected them. He never explained. He simply continued walking. Inside the warehouse, the air smelled of metal and oil. Dust hung in long beams of sunlight like frozen smoke. But unlike the outside, the inside was not abandoned. It was organized. Rows of tall shelves lined the walls, each labeled with neat handwriting. Boxes of lanterns, coils of extension cables, portable batteries, water containers stacked like bricks, solar panels leaning carefully against padded supports, hand crank radios sealed in plastic, first aid kits sorted by color. In the center of the floor stood a work table under a single hanging lamp powered by a battery unit that hummed softly, independent of the city grid. Elias checked voltages the way others checked weather forecasts. He rotated batteries the way shopkeepers rotated inventory. He cleaned solar panels with distilled water and cloth until their surfaces reflected the ceiling like mirrors. He was not collecting items. He was maintaining a system. To outsiders, it would have looked excessive. To him, it was alignment. Grayford rarely experienced power failures. At worst, a brief flicker during storms. At best, uninterrupted electricity for years. The grid was considered modern, reinforced, dependable. Dependable is a comforting word. It is also a fragile one. Summer arrived gently that year. The kind of summer that convinced people nothing inconvenient could follow it. Cafes extended seating onto sidewalks. Shops installed brighter lights to attract evening customers. Air conditioners hummed across the town like a single collective breath. Electricity felt endless. Invisible. Guaranteed. Elias still visited the warehouse twice a day. Now the jokes softened into indifference. Mockery requires attention. Indifference is quieter. One afternoon, a delivery driver named Marco followed Elias halfway through the warehouse door out of curiosity. "What are you storing all this for?" he asked, eyes scanning the shelves. Elias tightened a cable connector before replying. "For when the lights stop." Marco laughed. "They don't stop. They flicker." Elias nodded once. "Until they don't flicker anymore." It sounded dramatic. Unnecessary. The kind of sentence people associate with conspiracy forums and late-night radio. Marco shrugged and left. The warehouse door closed behind him with a slow metallic echo. Weeks passed. Nothing happened. The street lamps turned on each night. Phones charged. Refrigerators hummed. The town glowed comfortably against the dark horizon like a bowl of stars resting on Earth. Only small things began to change. A traffic light froze for 12 seconds before correcting itself. A grocery store register rebooted mid-transaction. Elevator doors paused longer than usual before opening. Wi-Fi routers needed occasional resets. People blamed updates, software patches, heat waves, anything temporary. Elias noticed patterns, not outages. Strain. He added another row of battery units to the warehouse. He tested radios twice instead of once. He began charging portable lamps even when they were already full. Preparation, before inconvenience appears, always looks theatrical. One evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, Elias stood outside the warehouse and looked not at the building, but at the distant city lights flickering faintly against the orange sky. They were beautiful. They were steady. They were trusted. He unlocked the door and went inside, tightening a final cable before switching off the independent lamp. Because light does not fail loudly at first. It fails quietly. The first real sign did not arrive at night. It arrived at noon. A clear sky. No storms. No wind strong enough to shake wires. Yet the lights inside Grayford's Central Mall blinked once, then twice, then returned. People laughed it off. A ripple of inconvenience, nothing more. Cashiers restarted scanners. Escalators paused and resumed. Music cut out for 3 seconds and came back louder than before, as if embarrassed by the interruption. Electricity had not disappeared. It had hesitated. Hesitation is harder to fear than failure. It feels temporary. But hesitation is also a symptom. That afternoon, Elias replaced 2 older battery cells in the warehouse, even though they still functioned. He labeled them secondary, keep, instead of discarding them. He was not eliminating risk. He was layering redundancy. Grayford did not notice the layering. Grayford noticed convenience. Air conditioners ran longer. Phones charged faster with new adapters. Shops installed brighter signage. Energy usage climbed quietly, the way temperatures do before heat waves. No one discussed it because nothing dramatic had happened. Nothing dramatic ever announces itself early. 3 days later, streetlights flickered across 2 neighborhoods simultaneously. Not off, just dimmer for a breath. People looked up from conversations, then resumed speaking. Children pointed at the lamps as if they had winked. A restaurant owner tapped a switch twice out of habit, even though the problem was outside. In the warehouse, Elias checked his voltmeter readings again. Numbers do not feel emotion. They display tension without panic. The readings were not alarming. They were uneven. Unevenness is not a disaster. It is a warning that systems are compensating. He added another solar panel to the roof the next morning. Neighbors assumed he was selling power. He wasn't. He was storing daylight. The following week brought heat. Not oppressive, just persistent. The kind of warmth that makes appliances work harder and people stay indoors longer. Fans spun constantly. Cooling units hummed without rest. Electric grids do not fail from single events. They fail from sustained demand. Grayford remained confident. The lights still turned on. The refrigerators still hummed. The city still glowed at night, like a polished coin beneath the sky. Only small inconveniences multiplied. An ATM rebooted mid-withdrawal. A pharmacy freezer alarm chirped briefly before silencing itself. Traffic signals lagged between colors by half a second. Half a second is not frightening. Half a second is ignorable. Elias began visiting the warehouse 3 times a day instead of 2. Morning, check charge cycles. Afternoon, inspect solar alignment. Evening, rotate lantern batteries. Routine expanded without announcement. When preparation increases quietly, it often means awareness has increased loudly. One evening, the town experienced its first true outage in years. 7 minutes. The lights did not flicker. They vanished. Conversations paused mid-sentence. Televisions fell silent. Refrigerators stopped humming. Then emergency generators activated across major buildings, and power returned. People clapped in some restaurants. Others laughed nervously. 7 minutes felt dramatic, but also reassuring because it ended. Temporary failure strengthens belief in permanence. Elias did not clap. He did not frown. He noted the duration. 7 minutes meant batteries were compensating somewhere upstream. 7 minutes meant reserves existed. 7 minutes also meant reserves were being used. He added 3 more shelves to the warehouse that night. Lanterns, water purification tablets, manual tools that required no electricity at all. Because electricity is not only light, it is dependence. The town adapted in small ways. People downloaded offline playlists just in case. Restaurants purchased small backup generators for refrigerators. Parents bought extra flashlights, still packaged in plastic, still unused. Preparation had begun, but it was shallow. They were preparing for interruption, not absence. There is a difference. Interruption assumes return. Absence demands alternatives. Elias tested his hand-crank radios the following morning. Each click produced static that slowly resolved into distant voices. Stations still broadcast. Signals still traveled. Airwaves do not rely on local grids the way cities do. They outlast comfort. Then the outages became irregular. 12 minutes. For minutes. 9 minutes. Never long enough to cause panic. Always long enough to create conversation. People began comparing durations the way they once compared weather forecasts. Only 5 minutes here. 10 on my street. Didn't even notice. Confidence did not disappear. It diluted. Dilution is quieter than collapse. At the warehouse, Elias drew a simple map on the wall showing neighborhoods and estimated outage times. Not official data, just patterns. Patterns reveal direction more than numbers reveal certainty. He noticed the center held power longer than the edges. Infrastructure always protects cores before borders. Grayford's borders included the warehouse district. He smiled faintly at the irony. One night, as dusk settled and street lamps struggled to reach full brightness, a child passing by the warehouse asked his mother why that building always had light inside, even when others dimmed. The mother glanced at the glow leaking through the metal door seam. Generator, probably, she said. It was not a generator. It was stored sun from 3 days ago. Inside, Elias was tightening a terminal screw on a battery bank, the soft hum of independent electricity filling the silence. He was not creating light. He was preserving it. Because grids do not collapse instantly. They fray, and fraying is invisible until something pulls. The final outage did not arrive with sparks. It arrived with calm. No thunder. No storm. No accident reported on the radio. Just silence. At 8:17 p.m., the lights across Grayford dimmed once, a collective exhale, and then vanished. This time, they did not return in 7 minutes. They did not return in 12. They did not return at all. People waited at first. Waiting is the most common reaction to loss when return has always been guaranteed. Phones lit up in hands like small artificial suns. Conversations shifted from annoyance to confusion. Elevators froze between floors. Air conditioners fell quiet. The city's familiar hum dissolved into something ancient and unfamiliar, stillness. Outside, windows opened. Neighbors called across balconies. Someone laughed nervously. Someone else cursed the utility company. Darkness feels temporary when you believe it is borrowed. It becomes heavy only when you realize it is permanent. 10 minutes passed. Then 30. Phone signals weakened as towers drained backup batteries. Online maps stopped loading. Streaming icons spun endlessly like wheels with no road. The city had not lost light. It had lost connection. At the warehouse, light continued to exist. Not bright. Not theatrical. Just steady. Elias moved through the aisles without urgency. He had rehearsed this moment without ever naming it. Lanterns glowed from hooks. Batteries hummed softly in their racks. Solar charge indicators blinked like calm heartbeats. Outside, footsteps gathered near the door. Not banging. Not demanding. Just approaching. Curiosity always arrives before desperation. A shop owner asked if he had power. Elias nodded once and handed him a lantern without discussion. A delivery driver requested to charge a phone. Elias pointed to a small charging strip powered by stored energy from the afternoon sun. There were no speeches, no declarations of foresight, only quiet transactions of light. Because light, when scarce, stops being decoration. It becomes direction. The second night was harder. Food began to spoil in refrigerators across the city. Traffic signals stayed dark. Gas stations closed because pumps require electricity to move fuel. People walked instead of drove. They spoke instead of texted. They listened instead of streamed. Grayford was not panicking. Grayford was recalibrating. The warehouse door remained open longer each evening. Elias organized shelves into sections. Lanterns here. Charters there. Water filters near the entrance. Not charity. Not business. Structure. Structure prevents crowding. Crowding creates fear. He limited how many batteries each person could take, not out of greed, but out of arithmetic. Stored energy is not infinite. It is measured survival. Some resisted. Most understood. When scarcity is explained calmly, it feels manageable. When it is hidden, it feels threatening. By the third day, the city's soundscape had transformed. No engines. No neon buzz. No elevator chimes. Birds became louder. Footsteps echoed farther. Conversations traveled across streets the way they once did decades ago. Children adapted fastest. They treated lantern light like adventure. Adults treated it like negotiation. At dusk, small clusters formed outside the warehouse not for power alone, but for certainty. A place where light existed felt like a place where answers might exist. Elias did not offer answers. He offered continuity. Each evening, he climbed to the warehouse roof and adjusted the solar panels to capture the last angle of sunlight. Each morning, he checked battery cycles before anyone knocked. Routine did not end the outage. Routine outlasted it. Weeks passed before partial power returned to certain districts. When the first streetlight flickered back to life, people cheered. When the second failed an hour later, they stopped cheering. Return was uneven, like frayed wires being tied together one strand at a time. By then, habits had shifted. Families owned lanterns. Shops kept manual cash boxes. Phones stayed charged not for entertainment, but for communication. The warehouse was no longer unusual. It was reference. People no longer asked why Elias prepared. They asked how. He never lectured. He showed how to angle a panel, how to conserve battery cycles, how to listen for system strain before failure arrives. Because electricity had not betrayed Grayford. Dependence had. Months later, when the grid stabilized and nights regained their familiar glow, the warehouse lights still turned on at dusk. Not because they were needed, because they were maintained. Neighbors still glanced toward the building when street lights dimmed slightly. Children still remembered where lanterns hung. Elias continued his routines. Morning, check panels. Afternoon, inspect connections. Evening, rotate batteries. No applause followed him. No titles were given. But the city had learned something quiet and permanent. Power is not the switch on the wall. It is the preparation behind it. The warehouse did not save Grayford by being large. It saved them because someone chose to store daylight before the night decided to stay.